Was this you? What happened?
I won.
This is HBR News number 431. Jezebel is no more. George Orwell is finally canceled, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. Hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I'm joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts, Mike J., Hannah Wallen, and Dr. Randomcam. And we have a great show lineup for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's HBR News Show, we're going to be talking about the latest news of Jezebel finally closing its doors, shutting down, and what that might mean, as well as, I guess there were also layoffs in related media, I'll just put it that way. A woman is saved from a mugger by a good guy with a gun, but laments it. George Orwell is considered problematic and more, so stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So you guys might have heard that the latest outing of strong female characters in the world of film has it basically went belly up. The Marvels, which was released last week, is essentially the biggest failure in all of the MCU history. Nobody went to see it. Very underwhelming box office, but that doesn't stop some really intellectually like powerful people like Stephen King from essentially taking jabs at the fan base for not giving their hard-earned dollars to a movie that apparently exists to make them feel like crap about themselves. So he's asking that people stop gloating over the failure at the box office. You know, I thought that we were against like these gigantic multi-billion-dollar corporations making money, but I guess it's okay as long as they're, you know, providing us with the message. So anyway, we're going to be reading this in the patron-only show. If you would like to join us in the patron-only show, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to participate in all of the additional content and also all of the extra stuff that's going on. I guess Allison's been playing Final Fantasy XIV in the Discord lately. I don't know if she just started it or whatever, but I noticed that, you know...
she's brand new.
Yeah, she's really, really new and just now getting into it. So, you know, maybe if you're interested, maybe you're playing the game, maybe you just want to hang out in there, maybe join us. Come check it out. And if you don't want to like, you know, if you just want to see what it's like, you can go for free by going to badgernation.online. And that will be enough to get you into some of the content so you can see what the community is like and, you know, get to know people or whatever. So please consider doing that. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we have been yeeted from the mainstream big tech internet, then go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. All right. With all of that out of the way, we are going to get ourselves stuck into the stories, and we are starting with Jezebel. Rip. F's in the chat for Jezebel. Okay, Mike J, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Why, thank you, Brian. So, as many of you may have heard, American media holding company GO Media, famous for running such publications as Kotaku, Deadspin, and The Root, have announced that they are suspending publication of online feminist magazine Jezebel. The suspension comes amid turmoil from the world of online media during 2023, as many companies have either closed their doors or engaged in brutal rounds of layoffs and firings. Other outlets that have been
like so many feminist projects, all it ever was following the path of least resistance, which is always step one, simp for women, step two, question mark, step three, profit. And it turns out step two is get skyhooked by a larger company with more money than sense, or a larger company with more ideological tunnel vision than money, such as the likes of Gorka and this GO thing that bailed them out. And Gorka took a Hulk Hogan flying clothesline to the knee, as one does. Point is, there's the reason Jezebel had to die, while Honey Badger Radio and A Voice for Men, the nemesis, are still going strong and will continue to go strong for a long time, because we have a slow but steady force that was founded by volunteers and is maintained by volunteers and paid for by volunteers. No paycheck of any size can motivate a grifter as much as the truth can motivate a critical mass of reasonably stubborn individuals with no fucks left to give. That's why we call it grassroots. It doesn't grow very tall, but it's capable of growing everywhere. Wherever it grows, it's...
Hello, Mike? Did we lose Mike?
I think we did.
Oh, no. Oh, there he is, sir. He's back.
Jezebel
You dropped Mike.
will not grow back.
Briefly.
Uh,
Yeah. No, you're cutting out a little bit. Is it a noise gate thing?
Y'all have gone robot for me, I guess.
Oh,
robot.
Shit. Well,
Yeah,
you sound fine to us, but it might be on your end. Maybe
Sounds like
a bit of a delay.
Internet thing.
Yeah, it might be an internet. I'm looking at my internet. It looks fine, so it must be
He's probably
something on Mike's
down
end.
on a little bit on bandwidth. I will say this: Jezebel is not alone. Right? I like to find crazy things in feminist publications for my after shows as much as I can. That we could laugh at them when we're reading, because who thinks that way and stuff. And I used to be able to go to a whole bunch of very classic, long-standing feminist blogs, and in the last 3 or 4 years, they have all stopped publication. Jezebel is just the latest one, and to me, it's sort of bittersweet. It's definitely something to celebrate, not in that they're not being censored. People just aren't bothering to go to their sites. They're not being read. Nobody cares what they have to say. Their vision is not shared, and that's not censorship. That's people having a different perspective than them and disagreeing with them, and not having an interest in theirs, and that's perfectly fine, right? The only sad thing about it is, who are we going to laugh at when they're gone? Because I don't really want to. I don't want to resort to reading David Futrell in the after shows. That's like, I don't know, digging through dog shit to find the corn. It's just, I suppose that's an insult to dog shit. And he'll be around even after they're gone, because I don't think he gets paid. I think he just is obsessive. So it might be all that's left.
Well, that's why I appreciate David Futrell, because he's grassroots as well, as fucking pointless and as much of a liar and bullshitter he is. He's going to be there, but Jezebel will not grow back like the grassroots.
No, they were grifters.
Some other bizarre tropical plant will be mass produced out of some other experimental psycho-botanical laboratory. And that too will eventually die, because they can't afford to feed it anymore. This is how the tortoise wins. Because the race in question is not to any given finish line. There's no given finish line. It's a race of endurance. It's how far you can make it before you crash and burn. And like every fable, it's on a scale larger than analogized. On an evolutionary scale, the hare just squirted into existence relatively recently, and it's only a matter of time before it overbreeds itself to death. Whereas the tortoise has been hobbling around for millions of years, and it'll keep going strong. Even when all the humans are dead and they've nuked half of all life on Earth, there'll be a few tortoises who are hiding in a cave and doing a podcast until it all blows over. They are the meek who will inherit the earth, folks. You might have thought that Bible passage was about the Jews, but I like to think it was about the MRAs. You'd be surprised how long we've been around in some form or other. You just haven't noticed us. That's how we survive, by being unnoticed and camouflaged until the day comes that we spring into action. So, yeah, good riddance, Jezebel. Yabu sucks to be you. Kiss my sweaty butt crack, you wankers. Yours sincerely, the Meek.
I guess the only thing I wanted to say to this is that Jezebel was originally part of the Gawker media network. And after, like Mike said, Hulk Hogan sued the pants off of them. I don't know what happened to Nick Denton, but I know that he's still out there doing stuff. Jezebel was then picked up by another company along with The Root and others. And now Jezebel is going to be closing its doors. Now, there is definitely cause for celebration because it means that people generally are not interested in the hateful messaging that Jezebel puts out. They are literal propagandists. This is what they exist for. However, it's also, worth pointing out that Jezebel was bailed out when Gawker got sued. And now they're closing, but somebody else might bail them out. So Jezebel might reappear, maybe under a different name, maybe under the same name, but owned by a different company. Or all of the people who write for Jezebel they're going to go on to write for places like The Guardian and Slate, and or they're going to join activist groups like Democracy Now! Or whatever it is. They may just go and make the Mary Sue bigger because the Mary Sue is still an extremely, popular force to be reckoned with. I'm still hopeful because really what it comes down to is like these things can happen to these websites, but as long as these websites have an audience, then they can kind of sustain. So what might happen maybe is that maybe the Mary Sue will see a bunch of new people. Maybe a lot of the people that wrote for Jezebel also wrote for the Mary Sue or any other number of feminist or, far left websites or whatever you want to call it. Because there really isn't that much difference, honestly, between the Mary Sue, Jezebel, The Guardian, most of Medium.com and stuff like that. So I'm glad it's good. It means that public opinion is definitely like being reflected, you could say, in where people decide to invest their clicks. But it's just important to note that these people don't disappear when their websites close down. They just kind of they go and do other things. Maybe they'll get jobs in government. Maybe they'll go work on, campaigns or whatever it is. So, we obviously haven't seen the last one because the problem is the ideology itself. And also, just like the last thing is, there was some recent data, I know we've talked about on the show before, that the Zoomers and the Alphas, the Generation Alpha, men and women are further apart politically than they have been in previous generations. And what that means is the women are moving further left or more feminist, and the men are moving away from that. I wouldn't even say they're moving right, they're just moving away from that. And so if it's true that young girls that are growing up in this, still extremely feminist society, in a very feminist education system and media and everything, if they're still moving in that direction, then they will probably be the new Jezebel or Mary Sue at some point in the future. We'll probably see that as a resurgence, assuming that is true, so we will see. I still think it's good news, but I would just say, it certainly is far from over, in my opinion. So does anybody else have any thoughts on this before we move on to the next story?
It'll be interesting to see, because this does create a void. It'll be interesting to see if anything does come forward to fill the void. I never trust the media when they tell us this whole generation is doing this or this whole generation is doing that, because look what they said about Gen X when we were in our 30s, and we had a percentage of Gen X that were slow starters. and a whole bunch of Gen X that were actually doing very well and not being mentioned in media at all. So it may be that there's a bigger contingent of girls in Gen Z that are non-feminist than they want to admit, and it is the feminist media reporting on this. So,
Yeah. Again, and another thing too, we talked a little bit about the Marvels on yesterday's patron show, and I mentioned that these films, this feminist media, we're talking about a broader thing here.
yeah,
The feminist media itself, if it doesn't do well in theaters, it doesn't really affect the people who made the film that much, because there are very rich and powerful investors that are going to pay them anyway, because they want the content out there, because they're trying to socially engineer, our society, in particular the girls. So even if the film flops, they're going to consider it a cultural success, like in terms of like the impact. And they've said as much. There's plenty of examples. I think Sana Amanat, who was, like, she was like one of the executives over at Marvel Comics, but more importantly, she was a very close friend of the Obamas and an activist. She said that, when people were asking her, are you worried about these sales? And she said, it's not about sales, it's about cultural impact. So they know that the ultimate goal has nothing to do with whether or not what they're doing is profitable, because there are people who make a lot of money that just they just pay them. And that's another thing too, is they're planning on cutting out the market completely and just, putting these things in libraries, for example. So they never had an interest in being a part of a, I guess you could call it a free market, because it won't have an impact on their products, won't impact the culture in the way that they want. And yeah, go ahead.
They think that if they say something is true enough times for enough time, that it will become true, or that at least people won't understand that it's not anymore. And I think they also think that if they push this stuff enough and they make it the only thing that you have access to, that it'll change your beliefs. That it'll move the Overton window. You got two groups of people trying to move the Overton window, right? You've got people like us that are doing it, through a grassroots movement where we're talking to other people, individually and in live streams like this and so on, and having conversations on social media with people who go out and have conversations with others on social media, and opinion changes that way based on the sharing of evidence, based on, this is one of the reasons why they want control over social media. They want to be able to say they're fact checking you when they're actually posting propaganda in response to your facts and so on. The other way is from the top down, and that's by making the ability to see things that are contrary to their propaganda impossible. Like, they take away everything that contradicts their propaganda, and they're in the process of doing that right now. That's why you see all these different movies and everything. So money doesn't really matter to them. Even like if they are getting no play, say with the Gen Z girls, because if Gen Z girls were really all feminist, they would be dying to see these movies. They would be dragging their boyfriends. You gotta take me to see this movie.
Yeah.
And there would be a lot more. Because they're being pushed in feminist media, right? There would be a lot more profit going on, right? If it was all, so there may be a bigger contingent of them than there were of Gen X, or than there are currently of Gen X. But I think there were more Gen Xers who were feminist when we were in high school and college than there are now too, because people grow up and they realize that feminism is stupid and dishonest. So all in all of that, like things like Jezebel, things like these movies that are designed to propagandize your entertainment and everything, ultimately by themselves they cannot achieve what they're trying to achieve. And ultimately they are going to take companies down with them in their effort to do that. But
Yeah.
don't expect it to happen next week.
Well, no, of course not. And I wanted to add to what you're saying about the movie. So the Marvels, most of the people, even though it was a gigantic flop, the biggest flop in all of the MCU's history, the majority of people who watched it, of those who did go, were still men. So it was still mostly men. So women weren't turning out for that. Mainly, I think it's because it's not their cup of tea in terms of like the type of film. They just don't want to see that kind of movie. And but they do want to see feminist content because Barbie made over $1 billion. So there is a kind of film that girls will turn out for.
I'm not so sure Barbie made that much money because it was feminist.
Well,
I think it made that much money because it was Barbie.
Possibly. But
Because Barbie also has it's got its own following, and to the degree that older Barbies are expensive and never removed from the box and things like that in the same way that action figures are.
Yeah,
So,
but I think that the thing is, I would agree if it was like one of those things where the opening weekend is really big and then there's a drop off, but there wasn't. It just kept up its momentum. And I went to the theater to see something else, and there were all these girls dressed up to see Barbie, and they were talking about Barbie. And when you look at what went viral from the film, it's this rant about how hard it is to be a woman in, like, you know, the best time in all of human history. That's what the takeaway is. So
that's the victim narrative. But women do that whether they're feminist or not. I've even seen non-feminist libertarian women do that. And all the women in the audience will cheer because they do hold that sort of self-martyrdom narrative. But it wasn't a matter of the word feminist was never if the word feminist was never used with regard to Barbie and feminists had not pushed the message and all of that, that would still be popular. That's kind of a gynocentrism thing more than a feminism thing. It's women are solipsistic, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that necessarily they would come along and say, well, because we're solipsistic, we also agree with everything else that feminists are doing. And I think a lot of women that will stand around and tell you how hard it is to be a woman would still get outraged over, like, if they read the 7 Years in Hell story, they would be like, that bitch needs to go down. You know, why is she doing that to that guy? It makes the rest of us look bad. But yeah, it's still a behavior among women, and it's feminist influenced. This wasn't Boda. This was not the first Barbie film by a long shot. There's a shitload of Barbie films. This was just its own unique, weird thing in Barbie. There are Barbie cartoon films. There are other Barbie live action films. It's a huge thing, actually. You probably won't find very many little girls in the United States that don't have at least one Barbie doll, if not more. And, you know, like I had Barbies when I was a kid. Mine were a little different, but I did have Barbies.
Yeah.
They looked like something out of Mad Max.
Well, we're digressing a little bit, but I want to let Mike J say what he was going to say.
I was just going to say, I think we were on two separate internets when the Barbie movie dropped, because I wasn't seeing anything about the girl power moment. It was 24/7 Kenergy emanating from the Kenethno state.
Yeah, I saw that too.
The amount of remixes and stuff like that.
Saw that
that
too.
Is the meme. That is the meme that will outlive the movie.
I think that's right, but all I'm saying is that normie women, this is very important, not people who meme on the internet, normie women that saw that movie, the message at the end is the takeaway. It's everything. And I don't know why, like, it's obvious to me, but this is not about that. We're talking about Jezebel, and I think that there is a link. So, but I'm going to read, I got a super chow.
Before you get into that, I will say this.
Yeah.
The thing that you said, the hard to be a woman rant, Kat Timpf, who is a libertarian commentator that is on, I think not the 5, the Greg Gutfeld show on
Yeah.
on
I
Fox
know what you're
News.
talking about. Yeah.
I haven't watched Fox in a while, but she went on a rant like that before the Barbie movie was a thing,
Sure.
and it got cheered and played. I saw people playing clips of it on Twitter all over the place and everything, and it was all stuff that women do to each other. But she didn't say that. She was just, this is why it's hard to be a woman, and it was all about your looks and all about you have to nothing
Yeah.
you can do, being right and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
She's not entirely wrong in that those things happen to women, but they are things that only happen to women if other women's opinions matter to us. Like other women do that to me and I don't care.
Right.
They can go fuck off, right?
Right.
So, but it is a thing. You're right that it is a thing. And it is something that if they're susceptible to it, girls will latch on to it. And it is an inroad for feminism.
Yeah. Sure. It starts with I'm a victim of something. And that's
or
what
it
I'm
starts with it feels better to be a victim than it does to work hard to avoid being victimized.
It's a very short trip, but okay, but I really got to move on. So I got a super chow from Meredith G, Top G. She gives us $5. It says HBR News 431. Honey for the Badgers. Jezebel was the useful idiot of a bigger media enterprise that sought to divide us. The problem was there was a glut on the market of this crap. Think of this as a market correction. Yes, thank you for that. And well, yeah, I mean, there's like the thing is, you don't even need to be a website that is explicitly feminist, like on its face, to be a feminist website. Like I said, look at most websites that whether they say it or not, they're kind of like, most of the time they're towing that line. But this is still a win. I will take it. I will take the W because it's gone and we are still here. So I guess that stands for something. But anyway, thank you, Meredith. I'm going to, I don't think I got any other super chows. So we're going to, oh wait, did something else come through? I just got a bloop. No, I didn't. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think of this one in the comments. And yeah, let's take a look at the next thing. This is an interesting story that we've talked about a little bit. Let me put it on the screen here. Okay. So a woman, you guys probably heard about this. A woman was being harassed by a homeless man in New York City subway station when a stranger used his gun to stop her from being mugged. Subway vigilante John Rote watched as Matthew Roche allegedly made moves to snatch that woman's bag. Rote whipped out the firearm and allegedly fired several rounds across the subway, so like a warning shot, I guess, while warning the would-be mugger to leave the woman alone. The 40-year-old woman, who did not want to be identified, told the New York Post, "Of course, I am happy that man tried to help me and that nobody was injured during the incident, but it's scary to think that people are carrying guns around the city. I understand why people do it. They see it as their only means of protection." From the New York Post, quote, Rote was seen in surveillance footage casually pulling the handgun from his bag and aiming it at the scuffle before shouting, "Get the F away from her." It all happened within seconds. It didn't faze the homeless man, he continued to say. Give me money, the woman said. That's when Rote allegedly shot the second time and continued yelling at Roche to back away from his victim. Roche finally stalled, giving the woman the chance to run away. Roche was then arrested after police arrived on the scene and charged him with attempted robbery. Rote, this is the guy with the gun, who has no prior arrests, was arrested the following day after an anonymous tipster recognized him on the surveillance footage. He was charged with criminal possession of a weapon, criminal possession of a firearm, and reckless endangerment and menacing. Menacing. NYPD sources said they don't think Rote was aiming at the vagrant and was just trying to scare him off. In this case, the man risks a lot to protect me, his safety, and the safety of other people on the platform. Yes, I do think he is a hero, but I don't know. I would likely think him a bigger hero if he tried to help me without the gun. In my eyes, the gun is a little extreme. It was a very dangerous situation. Anything could have happened, the woman said. The MTA and the NYPD aren't doing much to protect the public, but it's very dangerous. They're also very defunded. There are many incidents where weapons were involved and it ended badly. Honestly, I am against people carrying weapons with them around the city, she said.
If we're talking risk versus safety, then you have to consider how to translate this into the experience of the man doing the whole saving you from the criminal, little miss, whoever you are. That seems to be what you're doing. Namely, imagining that any given man also needs to be concerned about his own safety in the process of selflessly attending to your own safety. Why was this man confident enough with his own safety in this situation? It's because he had a gun. The criminal in question may have had a knife, probably did have a knife, and there is no safe way to bring a knife to a knife fight. You must bring yourself within melee range. There's no safe way to bring fists to a fist fight, all else being equal for the same reason. And there's certainly no safe way to bring a knife to a gunfight as per the cliche. But you may have deducted, dear listener, how the other combination works. Bringing a gun to a knife fight gives the best odds you can possibly get, as long as you're comfortably behind and beyond melee range, and assuming the opponent in question is not on PCP, in which case you'd better get a headshot in as quickly as possible and then hope for the best. If it really is about safety, then this really is one of those situations where a gun is the safest option to prevent violence. A ranged weapon avoids combat where otherwise it would be unavoidable. It's just that so many people are scared of guns because they've swallowed this idea that people don't kill people, guns do. So it doesn't matter that there's a person robbing you right here, right now, without a gun. There could be someone raping you and murdering you right now without a gun, and you wouldn't find it as scary as the guy trying to save your life with a gun. Far too many people don't appreciate weapons until the moment weapons save their lives. Just like they don't appreciate the police until the moment the police save their lives. This is a statistically unlikely event to happen to any given person, of course, so you can see why so many people go their whole lives blissfully unaware, yet fatuously opposed to those who might guard them at night. But it's an extra kick in the teeth when someone, even after a gun saves their life, or even just saves their handbag, and they still don't learn to appreciate the technology and the male selflessness that actually gives them the safety that they take for granted every day. Like, seriously, don't bother, my brothers. Honestly, if you're on the bad end of a 50-50 chance that the woman you're trying to help not only doesn't want your help, but will actively reject it, she might even categorize you as just another male villain who wants to oppress her just as much as the scumbag in the process of robbing her. Like, don't even get involved, my dude. It's very probably not worth it. Just putting it out there. I realize civilization on the whole requires good Samaritans like this in order to even have, well, order. But there's only so much you can do, especially when it's not appreciated. Approach with caution is the advice in a nutshell. Just like when you approach a criminal, make sure your weapon is longer range than their weapon. When you approach a woman, make sure her arrogance is not longer range than your patience. It's a judgment call on an individual basis. Best of luck, gentlemen. Above all, avoid the leftist city shitholes where these kinds of crimes constantly happen, then it's not even remotely your problem. Live your
I
life.
guarantee you.
Enjoy yourself. Drink waffles and eat beer or whatever.
I guarantee you it's not just her arrogance that you have to watch out for. I guarantee you this woman is profoundly ignorant in terms of interpersonal violence. I will bet you she grew up in a neighborhood where the kids get into fights with each other by yelling across the street, "You can't come into my apartment anymore," because they probably don't have yards. They're in New York. There are no yards left in New York.
You got stoops.
Not the city anyway. But I'm sure that she probably never duked it out with another kid over anything when she was growing up. And I will bet you that she never saw the boys in her neighborhood do it either. She probably grew up in a nice little middle class, namby-pamby, nobody gets into a fight, everybody gets in trouble if anybody in the class misbehaves badly kind of neighborhood and school system. And so she doesn't understand what happens during interpersonal violence and how fast it happens and how scary it is in the moment and how quickly it can get out of your control even if you start out having the upper hand. Right? She doesn't know any of those things. And so this is why when a woman starts trying to talk you down in terms of, here you are handling a situation where someone is being aggressive with you and you are defending, or where you are protecting somebody from an aggressor, that you need to be gentle with your aggressor. Like, no, don't listen to that. That's bullshit. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's an idiot. She's ignorant, and her advice is going to get you killed. That's the first thing I will point out about this. The second thing is, I will bet you she voted to defund police. I will bet you that she is one of those liberal-minded, all things the cops do is wrong, all of the people in jail just had a rough life, and no ill intent to go with it, and there's nothing wrong with just stopping law enforcement altogether kind of people, until she had to deal with, this bullshit experience. And by the way, there is a very, very important clue in the experience that should tell everybody why this guy needed the gun in that moment, right? If you can point a gun at somebody and they still keep coming at you after they see the barrel of the gun pointing in their direction, there is something wrong with that person. That is some of the scariest shit you will ever see happen to you, having somebody point a gun at you. And you stop what you're doing. You freeze when someone points a gun at you, unless there is something wrong with you. You have to either be a little crazy or high on something and no longer in control of your faculties and no longer able to judge how much danger you are in that moment. And when you fire a warning shot and someone keeps coming, that person is really fucked up. So dealing with that person hand to hand would be just about the stupidest choice you could make. And that's what this woman was advising this guy to do. So not only is she probably ignorant and probably sheltered and probably voted for this shit, but she's ignorant enough to get someone killed. And she would have if she had been able to control that guy's actions. And, whoever turned him in is a piece of shit. Really. But when it comes down to it, this fulfills one of the predictions that I made when they started with the defund the police thing. I told you guys the point of defunding the police was to get women to start complaining that the police aren't enforcing, right? That's the point, was to get women to start criticizing men and asking for more enforcement, asking for more cops, asking for more government control. And what happened here? She lamented the guy helping her having a gun and then suggested that it should have been handled by police. You're going to see more of that.
Yep.
That's the goal. Now, that's not to say that you should be engaging in vigilantism, because it's not your job. You don't have to do it. And as you can see here, it's not appreciated. But be ready when people, women in particular, start going 180 degrees in the other direction and want to go back past where we were before with over-policing to even more over-policing in a backlash against what's happening now. Because that's coming.
Except that it's going to be federal. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
that's
it'll be
what.
federal.
Yeah, it'll be federal.
It was in the 90s. Bill Clinton did that
Yeah.
in the 90s in response to this exact same kind of flip-flop. So, I mean, we're going to see it again, only it's going to be more.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, I've got some.
Yeah, I was
things
going
to
to
say
say,
about this.
I'm sure Mike J has something to say. Okay, go ahead.
I am going to take a bit of an interesting stance here. The woman is probably the least egregious person in this story. Aside from the... I'm not going to make any bones about it. Aside from the hero who attempted to do the right thing. Like, she acknowledges he's a hero. She acknowledges that a man risked his life to protect her. She does have a stupid stance on guns, but then again, she probably has lived in New York her entire life. I would be very surprised if she had any other opinion on the subject. And of course, she does live in a delusional la land of, well, you know, you just stand up and fist fight the guy and the Mortal Kombat music starts playing and, you know, the first to 2 rounds wins. And, you know, you press down, up, square, right, you get a fatality. But yeah, just on so many levels, like, yes, I would rather this scumbag who ratted out, again, a man who tried to do the right thing in the right circumstance. I wish he wouldn't exist or would not do this. I wish that this man would not be arrested. The only police escort this man should be getting is to receive the fucking key to the city. And maybe a small parade for his efforts. You know, I wish that there would not be deranged homeless people walking the streets doing this to people who, again, have, like, absolutely no sense of fear of death. I mean, when a fucking NPC in Grand Theft Auto has better survival instincts than you do, you got some fucking problems. And of course, I wish that could be a state where carrying a weapon around with you and looking out for your fellow man would be the norm. And not, you know, something that is so unthinkable that you get arrested for doing it. But yeah, as Hannah touched on, this is seemingly what these people voted for. And this is seemingly what they're willing to put up with. Like so many people came out to say when that guy got arrested for choking out that crazy guy on the subway, just, oh, well, that's just living in New York. You know, that's just what you expect. That's just the norm. And I hate to say it, but I don't think we can start helping these people until they decide to help themselves.
Shoot them all, let God sort them out. That's what I say.
Yeah, well said,
That's
Mike
my
and
piece on
Hannah. Yeah, I mean...
You know, in 1986, my family went to visit New York City. And I was excited to go because I've never been any place that urban in my life. The community we were coming from had, like, at that point, maybe 10,000 people in it. Right? And we were going to New York City that had millions. And that was just the coolest thing in the world. And we did. And it was great. You couldn't pay me to go there now. I wouldn't want to even... Like, I was at the airport there for a layover. I didn't even look out the window. You know, and it's been that way for quite a while. I wouldn't want to go to New York now because of shit like this being normal and the way people behave about it. They might say
Yep.
the same thing about Dayton, Ohio, but I don't think it's that bad here. It's not great. There are things wrong here, but jeez,
No, New York,
that's
LA,
not normal here.
San Francisco,
At least
Portland,
here-
Seattle, Chicago, Baltimore, they're all absolute like shit.
The
At
more,
least here in
the
Dayton-
more dense the
here in
population
Dayton-
is, the more objectively worse it is to be a person.
If that
But-
happened here in Dayton, we don't have a subway, but if that happened here in Dayton, anywhere in Dayton, where it was public place, that person wouldn't be arrested. Unless they were violating the law about having a gun too close to a school or something, that person wouldn't be arrested. And then it's legal here to carry a gun.
Yep, as it is here. Well, again, I mean, I think everything that was going to be said about this has been said. So thanks, guys, for great points. I'm just looking to see if I missed any super chows or anything. No, I did not. If you guys want to send us a super chow with your thoughts on this, it's just feedthebadger.com/just the tip, or you can put in a Rumble rant, a super chat, or whatever, whatever floats your boat, as it were. So anyway, guys, obviously the moral is, I guess, don't be a hero. It's like they don't appreciate it. Sometimes people just have to get a taste of the potential consequences before they start changing their tune. So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna go into it too much, but I spoke to a woman much older than me, and the topic of guns came up, and she was just like, because she wasn't from America, so she's like, why do you guys have to have guns? Why is it so important? And you don't understand.
Let me tell you about this thing that happened about 250 years ago called the Revolution.
Yeah, basically, though, the main thrust of what I'm getting at is that some people, and I think mostly it's women, I don't know why, they think that if only we just didn't have guns, there would be no more crime. There's this idea, if we didn't have them, then nobody could shoot anybody. It's but we do. You have to live in the real world. This is the real world. This shit is here. Okay.
Minor aside here, I have the perfect thing to illustrate this. The other day, I was out and about with a relative, and we had to go back to our house for some reason. And we saw, just walking along the street, a coyote. And it looked really skinny, a little bit mangy. It wasn't doing anything weird, but it was out in broad daylight by itself. So there's a lot of warning signs right there about rabies.
Yeah.
Again, wasn't doing anything sketch, but just going through the place, and we both looked at it and waited for him to get out of, eyesight to get out, and I hopped out. And I came back with my handgun. And I put it in the glove box, and my relative, who is, a very, very conservative 2A supporter, is like, why do you need that?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't know if you just remembered what happened, but a skinny, mangy coyote is wandering around in broad daylight, and also it's legal here.
Yeah.
Of course, nothing came of it. Nothing happened. Didn't have to, shoot any coyote. But better to have it, not need it, than to need it, not have it.
Yep. It's pretty simple, but some people just don't live in reality. Anyway, we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. All right. That's Mike. It looks like we got time to do this next one before you have to take off. So we're going to talk about the student that was suspended for saying the unsayable, I guess. I don't really know.
Seems to be.
Yeah.
They said Voldemort.
Close.
Worse.
Except it's not a person, it's a place.
Oh boy.
So after going viral on social media, a Southern California high school student's suspension and the reason for it have been confirmed as real. Newport Mesa Unified Assistant Superintendent Carrie Torres has confirmed that an unnamed student will be suspended from school starting November 13th for 3 days for the crime of saying "Free Palestine" to another student. The suspension notice that initially went viral on social media mirrors the confirmation and adds a slight more bit of context. It reads, quote, "The incident that caused this suspension happened as follows. Name redacted said threatening remarks to a young lady in class. He said, 'Free Palestine,' end quote." In an unconfirmed post, a woman on social media claiming to be the suspended student's relative claimed the student only said what he said after being called a terrorist by the young lady, and that he had been harassed due to his Palestinian heritage by other students in the past. She further claims that this harassment was made known to the principal, but nothing happened as a result. District spokesperson Annette Franco said in a statement on the matter, quote, "Newport Mesa Unified will not tolerate hateful speech in our schools, especially not hate speech that incites others to engage in negative behavior. We have an obligation to maintain a safe learning environment while respecting students' rights to speak on issues. We take our obligations to students seriously, and because of this, there is an expectation for students to engage in respectful dialogue for change, not hateful speech that is directed towards a specific student population," end quote. Newport Mesa Unified also claims that any information pertaining to the suspension some may have seen online or on social media is inaccurate and incomplete, but declines to share any further details about the incident, citing student privacy laws as the reason for doing so.
So, two things you can't help but notice in this conflict and in this debate about this conflict. If you support Palestine, you're an anti-Semite. If you support Israel, you're an Islamophobe. And I mean the slightest deviation from the absolute zero on that axis, and you're already treading one of the minefields that has been sprawled on both sides of you. And if you try to backpedal, you're now stepping on both minefields simultaneously. There's no semblance of a nuanced position that you can possibly adopt that won't get you pulled up by some dissident arm of the same woke machine. That is, unless you are a Jew or a Muslim. If you're a Jew, then of course you can say Israel has the right to defend itself and you are immune from criticism. If you're a Muslim, then of course you can say from the river to the sea and you are immune from criticism. But if you're a regular Western Joe, an everyday straight / white / male / Christian, delete as appropriate, then you are very much existing in an infinitesimally thin sliver of space between a rock and a hard place. And your opinion on the matter will not be appreciated no matter what. Anything you say will get you demonized by the same oikophobic hive mind that's currently driving itself nuts trying to decide which foreign team to support based on which of those teams is going to destroy Western values the quickest and most efficiently. This is, I'd say it's a trap, but it's not even a trap. It's just a series of holes that have been dug into the ground by people who have no reason to dig holes other than that they think holes are better than the space that would otherwise fill those holes. They don't care who it is who falls into those holes. If you move too far into their territory, you'll find yourself in one of those holes and they'll go, "We don't take kindly to people who move the slightest inch in that particular direction." So yeah, don't move in either direction. Stay between the two minefields on the thin strip of no man's land where you actually stand for your own country. That's how we used to do it. When I was in school, we had a vague idea of what Israel was and what Palestine was, but we didn't give a shit, and neither did the teachers. But we supported England in the World Cup. We supported Britain in the Olympics. What we argued about was which local football teams we supported and which bands we liked. And no one ever got suspended or expelled or even disciplined for liking such things or for liking anything, not even Israel or Palestine, because it doesn't fucking matter as long as you're getting on with your work and you're not beating someone to death or having a gun pointed at you from some guy in a subway. Can we just not? Yeah. Never mind. Never even mind.
So I think people who regularly listen have heard me talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict enough to understand why I say the whole situation is manufactured, and I'm calling bullshit on all of it. I blame the United States government for a large portion of it, and I'm not going to talk about that because something else is more important actually in this right now. The school has done something profoundly egregious in regard to its responsibility as an institution and the responsibility of the people of that institution, the adults in that institution, to teach young people negotiation skills and how to manage conflict without having it escalate into violence. They have told the students that if an individual loses control over their temper and escalates a conflict from verbal conflict to physical violence, that it is always the fault of the speaker that they're mad at. And that's bullshit. It's not just bullshit. It is advocating violence. The school advocated violence against people who said the wrong thing to its students. And I'm sure the administrator doesn't realize that they did that. They don't realize that they just gave students an excuse to attack people physically for saying the wrong thing. But they did when they released a statement that they will not tolerate speech that incites others to engage in negative behavior. And they weren't talking about speech that is itself directly advocating violence. It's okay for them to suspend a kid who says, beat that guy up, to somebody who's already considering getting into a fight, or says, I'm going to come in and shoot up the school. Those are things that, yes, they should be addressing that. But when a student says something political, just political, like we debated abortion in my government class, my high school government class. And there were some of us that were, felt very strongly on that. Like I was only a few years away from the experience of having had pig shit thrown in my face from a pro-abort. So, like, I was one of those people that felt very strongly about that. None of us would have come to blows over it because we knew that was inappropriate. Our teachers, right, our mentors had taught us to differentiate between having strong opinions and engaging in strong speech over those opinions versus throwing hands over those opinions. One is within the rules and one is against the rules. And they just fucked that up. They fucked it all up. And those kids, some of those kids are now going to be the next set of Antifa street warriors that burn down somebody's neighborhood because they're mad. Right? That's what they've done. They've just encouraged kids to develop that attitude. That is absolutely shameful. And it doesn't matter whether the issue is Israel versus Palestine, abortion, this school rivalry versus, that students not caring about sports at all, nerds versus jocks. It doesn't matter what group, whether it's big, whether it's small, whether it's life or death, whether it's petty as hell. Students should be learning that you express the ideas, that you challenge the ideas, you critique the ideas, you provide evidence, logic, reason, and boundaries. I'm done talking about, this subject because we're never going to agree on it, so let's just part. Let's walk our separate ways on it. That kind of thing. Not well, if you say the wrong thing, your fellow student can hit you. And we support their right to hit you for it so much that we're going to blame you for it and suspend you, not them. Like, I can't even express how much shame on those people for that. Shame on if somebody taught my kid that, I would be in there. They would hear me in the next town over. By the time I got done, every adult in that school would feel 2 inches tall.
Yeah.
That is shocking behavior from an administrator. And I don't even support what the student said. I don't necessarily oppose or support what the student said because I don't know what was behind it. Do they support the terrorist acts, or do they just support peace? You don't know. Half the people that say that have no idea what's going on over there. And this is a kid, so you don't know whether they've had a bunch of propaganda fed to them or whether they're actually aware of what's going on over there.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the thing. We don't know the context of this situation, and neither side seems like they're going to tell us anytime soon.
And fully, the context doesn't change that the administrator should never have communicated that speech incites others to engage. When he says negative behavior, he means violence. That students should not be taught that they are responsible for other people's violence when they say a political slogan. Buzzwords.
And that's the other thing too, is we don't even know if there was a punch thrown in this entire thing. The only thing the citation of suspension said was suspended for saying these 2 words in this order. And
I think that should be a lawsuit.
That should be. If there was no other inciting factor here, I do believe they have precedent on their side.
Yep. Public school.
This wasn't like this wasn't anything profane. This wasn't anything actually, advocating for any sort of actual violence. Just 2 words: Free Palestine.
And it is a government institution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, First Amendment, all the way.
There was one minor update I wanted to throw in here, but
yeah, go
I
ahead.
figured I'd say it live instead of kind of jiggering it into the write-up. There was a quote-unquote planned protest about this, I believe for today or yesterday. But a comment from the family was to say basically, no, there is not going to be a protest. As in, like, it was either canceled or just simply never going to happen in the first place.
They stopped it, maybe. Yeah. Possibly.
Now, I am going to point out, schools do have a little bit of censorship right. If I was a student, like this is from back when I was a student, I was on the school newspaper staff and yearbook and everything. They can censor those publications in terms of if the subject matter that you are trying to publish in those publications is inappropriate for the student age, right? You can't override the wisdom of the adults in that situation and say, well, I'm going to publish this thing about sex and violence in the school newspaper, and the adult says, no, we don't want 14-year-olds reading about that in our newspaper. If their parents want them to read about it in the city newspaper, that's fine. Or they can also say, if it would get them in trouble for libel, or if it's a spoken publication, like they have a radio station or a television station or something like that, they can stop you, but they can't just suspend you for words spoken in the hallway unless there's profanity involved. And there's nothing profane about saying to free a group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that it seems to me that our willingness to even engage in discourse has severely diminished. Like, the fact that you have schools punishing students for expressing an opinion they don't like, When you look, if I've watched a lot of like old clips. You can find old clips on the internet of debates and talk show discussions, with where the very controversial things were being discussed, very controversial people were on, and nobody lost their mind. Nobody tried to get somebody fired. Nobody tried to cancel anyone, at least not, right there. And it certainly didn't do that to children and students. This was like adults. And if you look at old like presidential debates, so when I say this, I'm not talking about kids. I'm talking about the adults today. They have no ability, it seems, to handle disagreement. Like, it's like we can't even engage these conversations. And there's a strong push to end these things, like a very strong push. I mean, you only, there's tons of examples, but this is like our discourse, our ability to have conversations is like all but gone compared to what it was like in the 70s.
What do you think?
Maybe when the internet started, but I don't know. Why? When do you think?
I've been asking myself that question constantly. It's just like, when did we truly get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of things, but
I can't recall a specific time, but I think it was right around the time we decided that, well, and this was largely a decision that people on the political left, I believe, made, which was, well, if you're simply talking to the other people, well, that means you tacitly support them.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you talk to them? I mean, haven't you heard what X, Y, and Z, the beliefs they believe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, but there's other stuff. I think that our education, the quality of our education is a lot worse than it was. I think that was a slow process. I think every generation, like after World War II, is more poorly educated than the one that came before it. And I think that the ability to handle like serious discussion, the ability to know how to think and how to process information, how to propose things, it's all but completely gone. Like, and you can see it because even the people who have all of the authority over raising and teaching and educating children, they can't handle this shit. And then you take that, combine it with other things like, how many children grow up in, like whole families where they have both of their parents and they're learning from that, and they have a community and they learn things through that, or like their media or whatever. I think that it's a thing that has built up over time, and I think it's worse now than, I mean, you can just look at like the data.
I have a slightly different experience. So it's not entirely different experience, but I will say this. It was 1985 or 86 when I had pig shit thrown in my face for protesting in favor of women having the right to know the name of the doctor that performs their abortion. That's it. And the reason that the women should have the right to know that is if the doctor engages in malpractice and does damage to their body when performing the abortion, they should have as much right to sue that doctor as you would have if you had that happen to you in plastic surgery or by a heart surgeon or any other physician that performs. They should have to be held to the same standard of practice as any other physician. And just that, saying, well, yeah, if it's medical, then hold them to medical standards. That was enough to cause an adult woman to throw pig shit at a teenage girl.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, and that's 1986. That's not today. That's not 10 years ago.
Sure.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, but it's also likely that it's worse now. Like, I'm not saying that we were super tolerant.
I don't think it's worse now. I think it's more widespread now. Where at that protest there was one woman in my vicinity that was willing to do that. Today there might be 5 or 10 in a similar 14-year-old's vicinity. And it's there have always been within, and it's mostly within the issues like that, the area where there's one side, it feels that they're defending innocent life, and the other side feels that they're defending a bodily autonomy right, and the innocent life that the other side is defending isn't real. And so you have hate on one side, and a lot of anger and outrage on the other side, and that has happened with a lot of things. It's happened with gay rights, right? It's happened with unions. It's happened with all kinds of different political opinions, and there's been a lot of violence involved in regard to union issues, for instance, and the mafia got involved in that as well. There's been a lot of violence involved in terms of gay rights, and there's been a type of mafia get involved in that as well, and now that's been corrupted. And there's been a lot of violence on both sides of the abortion issue as well. There's been murder committed on both sides of the abortion issue. And so it's really hard to say that it's not a new thing. It's not that people's behavior in general is getting worse. It's that we're seeing more people comfortable, a larger number of people comfortable with engaging in that type of behavior. Right? So it's hard to, and I've seen sort of a increase in that over time. I've been doing sort of this kind of thing, not maybe live streaming, but I've been doing political activism since I was a preteen, and I've been watching it. It's more like seeing a cancer spread through tissue than seeing it suddenly change. Like one day it's nobody's like that, and the next day a bunch of people are like that. And I mean, there were race riots in the 70s. There were race riots in the 90s. So there's always been this kind of thing. It's just there are more people who are comfortable engaging in false dichotomy thinking and taking it to a perspective or a place where they won't hear the opposite perspective or alternate perspectives to their own, where they won't look at evidence, and where they are willing to engage in violence and social cancellation, like social assassination of the other side. That's spreading, and it is like a cancer.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're going to move on to the final story. I look forward to your thoughts on that. Okay. So in news that probably feels like it should have taken a lot less time than it did. Did you ever come away reading 1984 thinking, wow, Orwell is such a misogynist? According to a biographer of Orwell's wife, that's a weird one. As cited by The Telegraph, the darkness that runs through 1984 is a reflection of Orwell's soul. Quote, he desperately wants to be decent, and wanting to be decent is an honorable thing, a noble thing. But writing a book like 1984, which is violent, misogynistic, sadistic, grim, paranoid, that comes out of a writer's flaws. It takes someone who is those things to go deep inside themselves and pull that vision out. A decent everyman underdog, the ordinary person that he might have wanted to be, would not have had those visions. She then added, it's a very curious thing that's going on. He is not a man of his time. It's not to be excused and thought of as back in the day. The Telegraph article titled George Orwell was sadistic, misogynistic, homophobic, and sometimes violent, has no quotes attributed to Orwell to prove this alleged misogyny and homophobia, and according to PJ Media, who's the source for this article, the entire article is premised on the musings of the hyper-feminist biographer of Orwell's wife, who died in 1945 and whom the biographer obviously never spoke to. End quote.
It seems Orwell's mistake, or at least what he failed to foresee, was the extent to which socialism could and would manifest itself. It was the same mistake so many non-socialists would make. I think he anticipated being called a fascist for the sacrilegious things he predicted. Even by the 1940s, it was already an established socialist tactic to simply call everyone who disagrees with you a fascist. It's a tactic that has survived to this day and only become more powerful as the general public loses any sense of a practical definition of what fascism even means. But of course, socialism, as these things do, has traveled the path of least resistance. And when it came to the already decadent, already industrialized West, the path of least resistance is the path least examined, the power dynamic between men and women. Orwell lived in a world where the figureheads of dictatorship were all male, whether it was Lenin or Hitler or Hirohito or whatever. That's why he referred to the incorporeal leader as Big Brother, because it's not the father as portrayed in the Abrahamic faiths. It's an authority claiming the ostensibly equal status of a brother, but still very much a male godhead. If he were to proffer a vision truly ahead of its time, then he would have called it Big Sister, that which proffers equality among women, with no consideration for anyone else. But if he had called it Big Sister, you can bet the feminists would have headed him off at the pass and declared 1984 a misogynist handbook many years in advance. And had him quote unquote cancelled out of existence before any of us were even born. It was the shortcomings of his clairvoyance in this area that kept him on good terms with the feminists for so long. So, yeah, Orwell, he took the slings of "you're a fascist" and he took the arrows of "you're a communist," and he was carefully able to dodge them all by finding allegories that refute both sides. But he never anticipated the flavor of the tribulations of the 21st century, where "you're a misogynist" or "you're a racist" is all anyone needs to say. And it'll happen to everyone. That author you liked from 50 years ago, they didn't understand how oppressive white people are, so they gotta go. That author you liked from 30 years ago, they didn't understand how oppressive straight people are, so they gotta go. That author you liked from 10 years ago, they didn't understand how oppressive cisgendered people are, so they gotta go. That author you liked from yesterday, they didn't understand what you decided to hate yesterday, so they gotta go. This is as much as Orwell did indeed predict. There will be nothing new, nothing novel. There will be no history, no context to anything. Just this insistence that things have always been this way and always will be. And people will fall for it, not just because of class warfare, but because of what we call gender warfare, bleeding out as it did into race warfare, sexual orientation warfare, ability warfare. Ironically enough, everything but class warfare, until there is nothing but one great machine AI acting as the upper class. All it had to do was call everyone racist and sexist. The path of least resistance. And it's because we didn't resist. Pardon us here at Honey Badger Radio for resisting. I hope we die naturally before the singularity gets hold of us and downloads our brains into an infinite nightmare of unimaginable torture. Maybe it's our own fault for being such misogynists, we'll tell ourselves as we scream into the void forever, louder and louder than ever and ever. Oh,
Yeah, it's honestly just typical feminist use of a typical feminist weapon. It's not really about him being misogynist. That's why they didn't have to have evidence. It's why they didn't have any quotes or anything like that. It's because it's about trying to get rid of him, and calling someone a misogynist happens to be the most effective weapon right now, or at least it has been for quite some time. And they're expecting that people aren't fed up enough with it to to make it not work this time. And that's it. It's complete mercenary use of the term. And it absolutely has nothing to do with what they really think of him, and everything to do with trying to eliminate an effective critic of that type of authoritarian collectivism. That's it.
Yeah, they had to. So now Orwell, late to the party, but he can now join his peers, Dr. Seuss, R.L. Stein, Roald Dahl. Who else? I guess basically Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, considering they're butchering their work.
It's literally everyone.
Yeah,
it will
basically,
be everyone.
Yeah. Oh, except for Stephen King, who is siding with the feminists. So he thinks he's immune. Like, oh, I'll be at the right hand of the devil. That it's better than being in his path. But yeah, Stephen King. Good luck with that.
He's not safe either.
He's not safe at all. No.
He occasionally included female characters who were not impotent.
H.P. Lovecraft too. H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, they did get Lovecraft.
Yeah, so
they got him ages ago because of his cat.
Yeah, they got him. Yeah, because of his cat. I mean, I admit I'm jealous. I wish I'd come up with that. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's not. It shouldn't be surprising. I thought it'd be a decent way to end the show because we are ending with an author who tried to warn us. and we're going to go into the patron show to talk about another author that well, where we could try to warn, or we could just let things go. But yeah, so all right. Well, thank you for coming on the show. We're going to go into the patron show now. We're going to read through the Stephen King thing. If you guys want to join us, become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. Oh, I got a super chow, so I better put that up on the screen. Richard Bier gives us $5 and wrote a giant paragraph. He says, have you seen the SJW getting stopped for drunk driving? A thing about the closure of Jezebel is that the next magazine of that genre will have an uphill battle, as the now unemployed Jezebels won't take kindly to anyone usurping their relevance. After all, how many political scandals have there been that always were just short of being of the same magnitude as Watergate, because Woodward and Bernstein will absolutely never be upstage as long as they are alive? Well, I imagine that a lot of the women, I mean, there are, I guess there are also men that work at Jezebel, but a lot of the folks from Jezebel that have left are all thinking, I'm going to build my own Jezebel with, you know, blackjack and hookers. Male hookers, though, obviously. Can't be, you know, can't be like objectifying the women's. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I suspect that they will find work and they're not going away. They're probably going to be writing freelance, or they're going to build their own website, or they're going to be writing for other feminist websites. They're going to go join the Mary Sue. They're going to go write for, you know, Hollywood. I mean, there's a writer's strike anyway, and nobody knows what they're doing over there. Or maybe they're gonna fire everyone and replace everybody with AI. The best thing about tomorrow is we don't know what's coming. What?
Sometimes I kind of think they were AI already.
Yeah, well, they were certainly NPCs.
Without the eye.
I think AI has a more complicated script.
There we go.
But anyway. So, yeah, we're going to go into the Patreon show, become a badger, go to feedthebadger.com, set up a monthly subscription, or just check it out for free by going to badgernation.online. Hopefully, we'll see you guys there. I saw some new faces in the live chat, so welcome to the show, new people. Please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss our streams. They do tend to be quite fun, and I try to make them as engaging as possible. So
Oh, and
hopefully you guys
hey,
will-
if
Oh,
any
yeah.
of you new people are in the vicinity of Virginia, myself and Brian, and Lauren and Lindsay will be meeting up in some public venue
Yes.
in the vicinity of Roanoke, Virginia, this Saturday.
Yes.
Do we know what the venue is yet, Brian?
I'm thinking the Pirate Sip. I think that would be it's a
Okay.
great bar. It's called the Pirate Sip, and they got, you know, drink, food, karaoke. So and it's not
Right.
it's a very, you know, it's a nice little place. I looked into it. So I'm thinking the Pirate Sip, and yeah, it'll be on Saturday. I mentioned this last week.
What time of day are we talking?
You know, like I would probably show up there around, I don't know, 6 p.m. or something, and just stay for
6 p.m. Oh,
Is that too early or is it too
that
late?
seems too late.
Oh, okay. Well, we can do 4, 1.
Whatever's up to you. I don't
Okay.
have I don't have transport. I'm just tagging along with people.
Yeah. Whenever I could be there like most of the day. It don't matter to me. But yeah, it'll be on Saturday, probably like in the afternoon, and
right.
yeah, just, you know, try to come see us. We haven't been able to do any of these meetups for a while because of certain things that were going on in the world.
Yeah.
But I think we can sort of try to get back to a sense of normalcy. So, and it won't be the only time. We'll do it again, you know. So, anyway, so I'm gonna wrap it up there because JoJo's becoming restless. If you guys like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. Links to all of the sources are in the on the Patreon page, which you can find through the link in the description. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.